Good morning, everyone. And again, thank you for coming out in this storm. I was telling my friend Renee Spencer here that by the time I got to the 15th floor, got 3 children ready and fed and ready for school, walked through the blazing wind and snow. I felt like I was at the top of Mount Everest. So I have accomplished a lot this morning. And yet, what really is exciting is to be here and to be around people that are thinking the way that we are all thinking. And I have been working with Big Sisters, who really not only is at the forefront of Boston in terms of thinking about gender and thinking about these issues, but I think of the country. A few years ago, actually when Jerry Martinson was still at the helm, she brought me in. I was had just finished writing Stand By Me, and she said, "That's a great book, but where's gender? We really need to talk about gender." And what was so fascinating, and continues to be fascinating, is how few studies are out there on the issue of gender in mentoring. I would say that Renee and I pretty much have cornered the market in the field nationally on thinking about these issues. We have taken such a gender-neutral approach to something that is so vital, relationships. And to think that there's no gender differences in relationships is to be blind to this, and to think that we can just kind of approach all relationships the same way in mentoring, which is a relational intervention, I think is really naive. And so what they did is they really redirected my career and my graduate students to think about these issues. And I have now had 2 master's theses and a doctoral dissertation focusing on the issue of gender and mentoring because of Big Sisters. And that really is the truth. They got this research going, and I want to share with you what we're finding because it's really different. So what do we know about youth mentoring? I want to quickly give you I've been studying youth mentoring for 20 years in a very sort of myopic way. I remember my father saying to me, I told him I had a new article or book out. He's like, "Don't tell me, it's about mentoring." And I said, yeah, that's pretty much what I do. Very encouraging. But I'm going to tell you, because maybe you'll be more receptive. So what I have found in 20 years of research, I'm going to show you in 2 slides, or 3 or 4 slides, and then I'm going to get to what do we know about gender, and then I'm going to talk about the implications all within 15 minutes. So let's start with what's important to know about mentoring. This is looking at a meta-analysis, which is taking all studies of youth mentoring, all evaluations, and seeing what is the effect of youth mentoring. And we see, for the most part, these are the number of studies, okay? For the most part, we're getting pretty small effects in youth mentoring. But there are some programs, and I would argue that Big Sisters is probably one of them, that are getting medium to large effects on average. But most programs in the United States are still in the small range, okay? And we need to know that, and partly I think it's that we're ignoring vital things that matter in youth mentoring that could improve it. And so now I'm going to collapse years of research, close to 100 publications, into a couple slides here to tell you what matters. First of all, what matters is that we need to have practices, that mentoring doesn't just happen by chance, that as you improve the quality of services that you provide, you improve the effects of youth mentoring, okay? And that is vital to know. So what are the things that we can do to improve the effects of youth mentoring? Youth with moderate risk, okay? People often think about mentoring as, let's get the kids who need it the most first, put them ahead of the line. Mentoring is not an alternative to psychotherapy or intensive treatment of any sort. It's for the kids who are not performing at their peak, not performing at what they're capable of, beginning to languish. It's also not a necessary inoculation for all kids, okay? So we also have data to suggest that kids who are doing perfectly well, who have strong relationships, who are performing well, don't necessarily need a mentor and don't benefit from relationship-based interventions. But what's important is we need mentors with skills for working with youth. And this is where gender-based sensitivity comes in, because the more sensitive you are to socioeconomic and cultural and gender issues, the more you have a sense of efficacy in working with girls, the better off you are as a volunteer. And then programs that are characterized by careful recruitment, training, monitoring, and are embedded with other services tend to do better. Okay, and the training part, I've worked actually with Sharon here and Renee. We've developed a training around ethics. there is a need for training. People don't just learn on the fly. They need to know what are the necessary skills for working with youth. And to the extent that we support that through evidence-based training, we're going to improve the effects of youth mentoring. And that evidence-based training has to include some of these findings I'm about to present on gender. Okay, so as I said, surprisingly few studies have actually looked at gender. And one other thing I want to point out, and this slide is going to overwhelm you, but I don't want it to, and that is, oh, it's not here. Okay, good. It's coming up. One of the things I want to tell you is that mentoring, what we're finding is that it works differently for boys and girls, and surprisingly few studies have actually looked at that. What do we know from looking at the literature? Well, once again, I'm going to turn to a meta-analysis. And this was a meta-analysis about gender and relationships that was conducted by a researcher named Alice Eagley. And she found that men and women, boys and girls relationships differ in a fundamental way. Women tend to have more emotionally intense relationships. Boys and men, and again, everybody, you know, there's always exceptions, but on average, boys tend to have more instrumental relationships. That is what she found after looking at 153 studies, collapsing them all. Okay, so of course that's going to come out in mentoring. The other thing is that, and I'm going to show you the complicated slide later, but I'll give you the punchline now, and that is that one of the things that I've done in my research, and what Renee has done in her research, is try to figure out not just does mentoring work or not, because that would get boring after 20 years. How does mentoring work? And here you're getting into the heart and soul of change. You're getting into, you know, I actually turned to the psychotherapy literature to see how does a relationship-based intervention work. And surprisingly few studies have actually looked at how does therapy work? How does it happen that you get in with one person and you connect with them and things happen in your life? And so what we've tried to do, my graduate students and I, is break that down and say exactly how is it working. And we've looked at different pathways of change. And one of the pathways, I'm going to just go ahead to that complicated slide. This is it. One of the pathways that we keep seeing is that when you have a good relationship, it improves your social emotional development. That is, your relation, you feel better. And this is how therapy works too. You're actually better able to connect with the people in your life once you've had this kind of corrective experience of having a good mentor. There's also identity development, which is more the role modeling. There's cognitive development. And that those are the things that lead to the positive outcomes, and that they are conditioned by a great many moderators, we'll call that the moderators, and it's mediated, and that means when we talk about mediation in statistics, we're talking about the effects of mentoring occur through improved parent and peer relationships, okay? I could show you a dozen studies that have supported each of these pathways, but the most robust is this one, okay? That what happens when you have a good mentoring relationship is it improves the closest relationships in your life, your parent relationships. And here's one study where we showed it. So mentoring led to improved parent relationships, which then led to all these other things. So parents often feel supplanted by mentors. What's actually happening is it's improving that relationship. It's reverberating back and creating this opening for the mother or the father or somebody to come in, and the kid is now open to adult influences. We found it with substance use as an outcome as well.